let's talk about a little socioeconomics. I'm seeing videos on TikTok, people in 1099 situations, DoorDash, Uber Eats, stuff like that, losing their temper on customers, saying, how could you leave such a little tip? And, I'm not delivering this for a $4 tip. Okay, first things first. These people are right. They're also wrong. The customers are right, and they're also wrong. The DoorDasher or whoever is correct. They should not have to deliver that food for a $4 tip. That is not enough. They're also wrong. They shouldn't be taking it out on the customer. Not like that. Because that's never going to work. And that's what the evil people want. This is a system that was specifically engineered and created to have customers and employees at their throats. They were hoping that civil niceties would prevent that from actually happening. But the core objective is to prevent people from focusing their anger on the party where it should be directed. And that's the employer. Because the employer, who is a state entity in this case because they promote legislation, has created the legislation that allows this to happen. It should not be legal, but it is. Hopefully that will change. One of the biggest reasons I support this new Biden minimum wage bill is not even for the $15. It's for the elimination of tip credit nationwide. What is tip credit? You say that tips are optional, and yet we have laws that assume the tip will happen, and people are taxed and paid as if the tip will happen. So they are assuming something is mandatory without actually making it mandatory, because they can't. They can't make you tip without your permission. If I go into a restaurant that says gratuity is automatic, I walk right out. It doesn't matter how I could be planning to tip $100. I'm walking right out because you're not going to tell me what I will and won't do regarding a gratuity. That's not a gratuity. That's a fee, and it should be called as such. I imagine you'd be upset at the same thing. Now, in regards, we're going to talk about the 1099 in a minute. Well, let's talk about that first. A 1099 employee is not an employee. They are a subcontractor. Now, to be a true subcontractor, the subcontractor needs to be able to set terms. These companies have been getting in trouble because they are hiring employees but pretending they're 1099s. That's why these drivers can now refuse to take an order. And they can't be punished for it, at least not directly. You can always be punished because we are a not free to work nation. You have no right to work. You could be fired for any reason whatsoever. You could be denied employment for any reason whatsoever, as long as you don't say what that reason is. There are certain protected classes, but that's easy to get around. It's on you to prove that you were not hired because you were black, or not hired because you were old or handicapped. That's pretty hard to do. The burden of proof is on the wrong side, because we are a very anti-consumer and anti-citizen nation. A 1099 is a subcontractor. That means they are literally self-employed. Now, that has ramifications that you don't realize. So, for example, employees in this country get almost no protections whatsoever. But even the little protections that an employee gets doesn't exist for a 1099. You get none. On top of that, you pay more in taxes. You see those taxes that come out of your paycheck? Those are federal income taxes on your income. It's actually revenue tax, not income tax. You're also going to pay federal income tax for Social Security, and you're also going to pay federal income tax for Medicare. Now, the thing is, you only pay half for Social Security and half for Medicare. Your employer pays the other half. And that's the fourth one we call payroll taxes. So you usually end up paying around 9 or 10% in payroll taxes, plus 10% on anything over $12,000. Your first $12,000 doesn't have federal income tax, but it does have the federal income tax, Social Security, and federal income tax, Medicare. Now, when you are self-employed, you have to pay both halves. So you pay 15.3% to the federal government plus your 1040 W-2 tax. Then you're going to have to add your state income tax. So in my state, it's about 4.5%. It's a graduated tax, but it comes out to about 4.5%. So you're going to pay 20% of everything you make in taxes. So when you get that $5 payment from DoorDash, $1 of that goes to taxes automatically. $1 is gone. So you got $4 left. Now, vehicles cost money. I would not do any delivery job for less than 57.5 cents a mile, because I think that's low, but that's what it costs to drive a car. Because you're thinking, well, it doesn't, you go 10 miles to go to a local pizza shop, it costs, what does that cost me? Let's see, 57.5 times 10, that is, I did that wrong, 0.575 times 10. That's $5.75. I need to make $5.75 before I make anything at all. Because anything less than $5.75 and my pay is zero. You're saying it doesn't cost me $5.75 to drive to the local pizza shop. Yes, it does. You just don't have to amortize the costs the same way as a driver does. I was driving 55,000 miles a year. And for physical reasons, I could not use my most efficient car. I had a Geo Metro. I was getting 62 miles per gallon, but it was unviable for delivery. The car was great. It drove fine. It was wonderful, but I'm 6'4" tall. You try climbing in and out of a Geo Metro at 6'4" tall 50 times a day. Any money you save in gas, you'll be paying to your doctor and your chiropractor. I mean, if you're a little 110-pound shrimp, sure, you can jump in and out of a Geo Metro all day long. I can't. Even ignoring my weight, even if I lost 200 pounds, I'm still not going to be able to climb in. I actually had to take a bowling ball and smack the bowling ball into the roof of my car to create a dome where my head sits, because my head was jammed into the roof of the car. If I have a long 10-hour drive, no big deal. But climbing in and out of the car 50 times in a single day, which is common for pizza delivery, no, it didn't work. So I drove the minivan. Got 24 mile. Well, I probably didn't get 24 delivering pizza. I probably got more like 17. I can get like 25 to 30 on the highway, but I probably got more like 17 driving. So 55,000 divided by let's be generous and call it 20 miles per gallon. That is 2,750 gallons of gas times 3. That is $8,250 for fuel. Just fuel. Not maintenance, not fluids, not repairs, not purchasing the vehicle, not insurance, just for fuel. My first $8,250 every year went to fuel. So my cost in just gasoline alone to deliver to you, let's say you're 6 miles away, that's 12 miles. So 3 divided by 20 is 0.15 cents per mile times 12. So it's $1.80 just in gasoline to go to your house. Now let's talk about car insurance. I own a house. I have to have commercial coverage. Most people don't realize when you do commercial things with your car, with the exception being driving back and forth to a day job. Okay, so your 9-to-5 job, that doesn't count as commercial driving. That's included under the umbrella of a personal insurance policy. But when you use your car for business, like literally for business, delivering pizza, delivering DoorDash, that's considered commercial usage. So the insurance policy that I pay $900 a year for now is $2,500, actually almost $2,600 a year. So I'm paying $2,600 a year. That is $1,700 more than my normal policy that I would have for my car if I were not driving commercial. And that's actually a bargain. I was getting quotes of $2,500 a year just for the rider, not including the car insurance, just for the commercial rider. So you're talking $4,000, $4,200 a year for car insurance. That's what Geico quoted me to use my electric car to deliver for pizza. $4,200 a year. It turns out that State Farm will explicitly cover pizza delivery If you are doing it part-time, 2 or 3 days a week, those are your magic words. If you're delivering pizza, you sign up for State Farm, and your magic words, I do part-time pizza delivery 2 or 3 days a week. Do not deviate from those words, and they will insure you. Okay? That policy costs $1,700 more. Divided by 12. That means I pay an extra $142 a month just to make sure if I get into an accident, my insurance company doesn't say, you were commercial delivering, we're not paying the claim. And then you get sued in civil court and you lose your house. This can and does happen. My sister's boyfriend, now husband, was delivering pizza in Delaware. He had, actually, I think it was Geico, but a regular policy. A lady jammed her $50,000 SUV in front of him to force her way into the lane and crashed into his car. She blamed him. The cop believed the white woman over the rich white lady in her $50,000 SUV over the little black kid in his $700 beat-up Galant. He was found guilty. His insurance company said, we're not paying. You were delivering pizza. We don't cover that. It's commercial driving. So it was like he literally had no insurance. They sued him in civil court. He now has a $25,400 civil judgment against him. He can never own a car. He can never own a house because they'll come after it. They'll take it. They'll put a lien on it. You know, it's just, he's screwed. Okay. So you have to be insured. This gets very expensive. Now, you also have wear and tear on the car. You're thinking, well, how much wear and tear can there possibly be on a car? Believe it or not, this number is from the IRS and the Road Association. It's adjusted every year, and the number they came up with was 57.5 cents a mile. That's how much it costs to own, operate, and drive and depreciate a car. That includes wear and tear, maintenance, depreciation, insurance, everything. Now, this doesn't actually include insurance for pizza delivery because that's extra. You have to have commercial coverage. So that 57.5 cents covers the $900 insurance. It doesn't cover the extra $1,700 insurance you pay for commercial driving. Commercial drivers have a different rate. They usually, commercial drivers will usually use deduction instead of a standard deduction because commercial drivers have a higher cost. For personal people, it's easier just to have the 57.5 cents a mile plus your extra for commercial coverage if you have it. So for me, it would be 57.5 cents a mile plus $1,700. And to figure out what that is per mile, I would take my total miles driven for the entire year and divide that into 1,700 and add that to the 57.5 cents. You'd be surprised how much it costs to maintain a car when you're driving it this much. I was going through a set of tires, every 7 or 8 months. I hardly ever wore a tire out. It was always, debris in the road, pothole, whatever. Especially in the wintertime when you can't see them. There's nothing there. The road looks perfectly flat. And then your tire hits that pothole, the snow crushes, and there you go. You now have a bubble the size of a golf ball on the side of your tire, and you have to replace the tire. You might have 30,000 miles left on the tread on that tire. It doesn't matter. You now have a big bubble, and you have to replace that tire. I got very good at finding cheap used tires, and I kept a stockpile of 28 tires in my garage. I really wish I could have brought those tires with me, but I didn't have enough room when I moved out here. But I actually had full sets of rims and tires so that, if I got a flat, I didn't have to go and pay full price for a tire. I popped a spare with a rim on the car, full-size spare, and then just waited until I found a good deal on tires to replace the backup tire again. Because otherwise, $200 a tire, easy. You might blow a transmission, once in 20 years. Well, one of the reasons the churn rate is so high for pizza delivery drivers is when they blow an engine or they blow a transmission and it costs them $3,000 to repair or replace it, and they realize that all the tips they just made over the last 8 months are gone. It just went into that transmission. Because we're not driving like you are. We're not driving 10,000 miles, 12,000 miles a year. We're driving 30, 40, 50, 60,000 miles a year. We're driving more miles in 1 year than you drive in 5. So take 5 years of maintenance on your car and do all that in 1 year. And that's what we have to do. That's where the 57.5 cents a mile comes from. So that's legitimate. Interesting, the camera crashed at 14 minutes. Anyway, that's where we come from on this. Now you're saying, well, why isn't this added to everything else? It is. What, you think Walmart is not adding the cost of that semi-truck to deliver the food to their store into the price of your products? Seriously? What planet were you born on? The difference is that food truck might contain $200,000 worth of food and products, might contain $500,000 worth of food and products. So the cost of that truck gets amortized over all those products. It might be a nickel on the price of each product. But that's not what you're getting when you order DoorDash. What you're getting is personalized, individual, single human being using their own car, driving to your house to deliver your food. So 100% of the cost of that delivery has to go into your order. You can't amortize it across other orders because each of those other orders are also individually delivered. So that's not how it works. The problem is the drivers are getting screwed by laws that allow them to be treated like 1099s and that depend on a tipping system. The problem is we have some of the highest poverty rates in the country in history, and we have some of the worst economic situations in history because of this freaking pandemic, and so people are suffering. So they don't want to spend money on tips. But the problem is the driver's costs don't go down. In fact, they go up. So now they're spending more and paying less. You say, well, get a different job. Good luck with that. There's currently 31 million unemployed people in the country, and there are 7 million jobs available. And that's ignoring qualifications and geography. Yeah, sure, the $16 an hour job might be available 2,000 miles that way. Or 70 miles that way. Or, yeah, here's a job that's $20 an hour, but you need a 4-year degree. So you're clearly not getting that job. And if you're that desperate for money, you also don't have the money to support yourself for the next 4 years and pay for the education to hope that that job is still there in 4 years. Good luck with that, okay? That's not viable. Anybody who says get a better job should be punched in the face. I'm not kidding. Anybody who simply says that people should get a better job, the only correct answer to that is to punch them in the face because they have no attachment to reality. Or better than a punch, slap. Take your big fat palm and just whack right across their cheek. All right, make their head go whack and snap back. Snap that person back to reality. That is victim blaming. That's like saying, well, it's your fault you got raped because you were dressed in a pre-skirt and a shirt. Yeah, are you serious? I mean, there's no difference there. So this tip credit system was created during a time where the economy is doing very well. People have plenty of money. And so and nobody complained because you got plenty in tips. Well, now we don't get tips.
I'm Groot.
Okay. Now, why is this your fault? Because it is partially your fault. Matter of fact, it's more your fault than the driver's fault. The driver doesn't have a choice. 31 million unemployed, 7 million available jobs. You don't have a choice. You don't have a say. You take whatever job you can find. Yes, some people are lazy. Some people can find a better job. Not everybody can. There isn't enough jobs for everybody. There are more people than there are jobs. This is kind of the point of having a minimum wage. Be a livable wage, which is what it was supposed to be. Minimum wage was supposed to be a living wage. The nature of having a non-living wage is that people end up working 2 and 3 jobs, which makes the problem even worse. Because when I was working 3 jobs, I was taking 2 jobs that 2 other people could have had. I was actively reducing the number of jobs in the workforce because I was working 3 full-time jobs. Full-time jobs. If you consider them part-time, I could be taking a job that 4 other people could have been working if you consider, 2 of those jobs being 4 part-time jobs. But it's the situation I was in, okay? And so to say that people need to get a better job is extremely dishonest and extremely immoral. And when I hear people say, you don't deserve that kind of pay, I'm sorry. If you're performing a job, you deserve a living wage. Whatever that is. Now, people say, well, you shouldn't live luxury. Are you fucking kidding me? We're not talking about luxury. We're talking about a living wage. A living wage doesn't mean you go and eat steak. Okay? We don't eat steak very much. We have steak maybe twice a year. because it's expensive as hell. Okay, I have to cut from somewhere for us to eat steak. Okay, it's just it's a guilty pleasure we have once or twice a year, or if I get super lucky and it's crazy on sale, which doesn't happen very often. Steak around here is $10-12 a pound. That's one thing I miss about Pennsylvania. You could get steak pretty cheap in Pennsylvania. Well, I mean, it wasn't high grade steak, but it was still steak. So a living wage just means survival wage. It means you can pay for housing, you can pay for health care, and you can pay for basic living expenses. This assumes zero debt. Okay? Because if you have debt, that's barring some limited circumstances, that's for the most part your fault. I mean, all of my debt was family debt. But ultimately, I chose to take on that debt. I could have said no. I could have chosen not to pay my dad's past due bills and let him lose the house. I chose not to do that. So technically, that is my fault. So technically, for the most part, except for medical debt. Medical debt is never the individual's fault, in my opinion, because our medical system is completely fucked in this country. But other financial debt, consumer debt, is for the most part self-inflicted. It's technically your fault, even if you were pressured into that position by reality, by life circumstances, whatever. The point is, I still chose. Unlike getting robbed at gunpoint, where saying no results in your brain matter being splattered on the wall behind you, so that's not really a choice. There was no gun to my head when I chose to take on the family debt. I just did it because it was the right thing to do. Okay, but that was my choice. That's minimal survival. That's not luxury. Okay? Having a home, being able to pay to see a doctor, those aren't luxuries. Those are basic necessities. Having water, having minimal electricity, those are basic necessities. Even having internet is a basic necessity nowadays. In a lot of places, you can't actually function properly without an internet connection and a phone. Now, thankfully, we can get that pretty cheap. I mean, you can sign up for Hello Mobile for unlimited talk, text, and data for $20 a month. Right? Well, 25. It's 20 for us because we have 2 accounts, so you get a discount. But the point is, you can get it very cheap. We can ignore that semi-luxury as affordable for just about anybody. Now, if you want an iPhone 12 with Verizon service, that's a luxury. So they've twisted this system called tip credit that allows them to pay someone less than the already slave wage minimum wage, but pay them even less. Now, if you're getting $10 tips all day long, that's not a big deal. What happens when those tips stop? Okay? These employers also get to count every dollar you get as part of your wage. Even though it's not actually part of your wage, most of it's actually costs, your operating costs, which are not supposed to be counted as part of your wage. Technically, that's illegal. If they are using their car for your business, you owe them money for using your car for your business. The problem is there's no enforcement. So even though, for example, in Pennsylvania, state law says the use of my car for pizza delivery is a business expense of Papa John's, not me, there's no enforcement built into that law. So they can't actually do anything about it. You could sue them, and you would win. That does happen. The problem is it costs a lot. And you will lose your job. And most people can't afford that. When you're making $4 an hour, you can't afford to both lose your job and pay for a lawyer when you might not win. There's a pretty good chance people have won, but you might not. The problem with services like DoorDash and Uber Eats, and you're not going to like this, you're really not going to like what I'm about to tell you. These services shouldn't exist. They're not viable. It is not practical or viable in our economy to have personal butler service, and that's exactly what it is. It's personal butler service for fast food. Your $10 Wendy's meal should cost you $12 to $15 extra on top of that. I mean, if you are, let's say you're 10 miles away, Okay, that's totally reasonable for you to be 10 miles away. That's 20 miles round trip. 20 times 0.575. It's $11.50 just in mileage. I haven't even been paid yet. Okay, now add the $3 that DoorDash takes for their fee. That's $14.50. That's not for the food. That's just for the service. And I still haven't been paid yet. That's just to cover the car and the fee that the company charges. $14.50. Whether you order a $6 Big Mac or 10 $6 Big Macs, that actually doesn't change the value proposition at all. Nothing changes there because that's you're paying for the food separately. Okay? So you're going to pay your $6 times 10, your $60 for your 10 Big Macs, whether you're 1 mile away or 20 miles away. Okay? But in order for this service to be viable, you've got to pay $14.50 in service fees. That's for mileage and the company's profit. And that's before the driver gets paid, because the driver hasn't gotten a cent yet, hasn't gotten a penny. $14.50 if you're 10 miles away. How viable is that service to you now? So you're going to pay at least 17 or 18 bucks on top of the food cost. And that only gets me like $3 or $4. And that round trip's going to take a half an hour. So that doesn't even get me $7 or $8 an hour. I might decide that's not worth it. Would you deliver food for $3 an hour? Well, if you're 10 miles away and the person's using their own car and you want to pay that person, $6 an hour, your fee is going to be $17.50 to deliver that Big Mac. Doesn't sound so awesome anymore, does it? But that's what it would take to make DoorDash viable. So how does DoorDash work? It works by transferring the cost to the driver, to the individual employee, and giving that employee no recourse to recover their costs. You're basically telling the employee to eat the cost. And you wonder why the DoorDasher doesn't want to deliver for $4. You are literally telling that driver, spend 15 bucks and I'll give you 4. Why would they bother? That's why. See, what happened is they were punishing drivers for not taking these unprofitable runs. And they got sued and lost correctly because, hey, if either he's an employee and you have to pay a minimum wage plus costs for using his car, in which case you're paying $18 for that Big Mac plus the cost of the Big Mac. Okay, $18 plus the cost of the Big Mac. Or we lie and cheat and tell the driver, go fuck yourself, let's hope your car don't break down, and pray you get enough tips. Well, the driver sued and said, wait a minute, if we're employees and have to follow your orders, then you have to pay us like employees. But if we're independent contractors, we can choose whether or not a job is profitable for us to take it. And so, of course, they don't want to pay them like employees, so they had to give them a choice without consequences. There's still consequences. They hide it. You get a rating, and if you get rated too low, they bump you from the service. So there's still consequences. It's bullshit. But the point is, that's why you'll have an order that just sits there and doesn't get picked up, and drivers keep skip. Because it's going to cost them $15 to bring it to you, and you're only giving them a $4 tip. It's not their fault. You want them to spend $15 of their money to deliver your product for a $4 tip.
I'm Groot.
Even if you include the $2 or $3 they get from DoorDash, that's $7. But they're going to be spending $14.50. And that's for zero pay. That's I'm sorry, $11.50. That's $11.50 before they've gotten paid. At $11.50, they've gotten zero pay. So they're going to spend $11.50 and only get $7. Now, the last time I checked, that results in negative pay. They're losing money. They're trading the future cost and expense of their car as a loan shark loan to get cash now. But the problem is they're not going to put that money into the car. They're going to put that money into rent, into food, into the gas tank. And then later on, when the car finally breaks down, they can't fix it. Now you know why the churn rate is so high for delivery drivers. Because once their car breaks, they realize they're not actually making any money. They're making negative money. Services like DoorDash are not viable. They are not commercially viable. They only work because we are literally creating a slave labor force of drivers who have to eat the costs and don't get compensated for it. I mean, seriously, you think it only costs $3 to hand deliver a product using a vehicle to your door? Think about that logically. I told you weren't going to like this. You don't like it because you like getting that service nice and cheap. You like the idea of paying someone $3 to use their own car to hand deliver food to your door. I don't blame you. It's a pretty sweet deal until it's your car. And then you learn the hard way, holy shit, this is not such a sweet deal anymore. The only reason I could do pizza delivery was because I had an electric car. And I was able to amortize the cost of that car over 2 different jobs, and the jobs didn't charge me for electricity. Otherwise, I would never do pizza delivery, not with a gasoline-powered car. I wouldn't do pizza delivery for less than $12, $14 an hour and 57.5 cents a mile, and the company pays for the commercial coverage of insurance. Otherwise, you're giving me $20 an hour and 57.5 cents a mile. Because I'm going to have to pay an extra $1,700 to keep a lawsuit from taking my house from me because I get into a fender bender and my insurance company says, we're not paying. I mean, you're going to come up with all kinds of excuses because you're greedy and selfish. You want these services, but you don't want to pay for them. You don't want to pay what it actually costs. It's because you're not supposed to have these services. These are luxury services. These are services that rich people have. You know what a rich person pays a butler? Whoa, what is the a butler earns between $50,000 and $150,000 annually, plus expenses and benefits. Okay, you want 150? You want to let's split it in the middle. You want $100,000 worth of service for $3 fee on your meal? Are you serious? It's not viable. Door delivery service is commercially unviable. It doesn't work. Not for middle class people. You don't make enough money in the next 10 years to pay for that service. And you wonder why the drivers, when they figure out I'm making negative money. I mean, hello? I'm sorry this video is so long, but it's a long topic. It's a very involved topic. And if the company were actually forced, you say, well, the company can provide a car. Yes, but now you're still going to pay $15. Because now the company is actually going to have to pay for a car and insurance and maintenance and fuel and tires. And you think the company's going to eat that? Well, the company's going to do the same math. It cost me $12 to bring the food to that customer, and I want $2 for a fee, me being the company. So they're going to charge you $14. Well, that company's never going to exist because they're going to realize right away that 99.9% of their projected customer base can't afford it. You might have a few people in Beverly Hills who could afford such a luxury service, but your average, Tom, Dick, and Harry, an average Tom, Dick, and Harry U.S. city can't afford that. You're getting a service you can't afford. I told you weren't going to be happy. Now, that doesn't mean the driver should be attacking the customer for the tip, because it's as much the customer's fault as it is the employer's fault. Because we, the customers, allow our government to create these loopholes in the law that allow people to be paid slave wages for this kind of work. And then we allow ourselves to be brainwashed when we say, well, you don't deserve that kind of pay because I'm already getting $15 an hour. Well, maybe, just maybe, it should clue into your head that you deserve more too. Did you ever think of that? Instead of shitting on the guy making a slave wage, maybe your shitty wage should be higher too. If a standard living wage, if it in most of the country, even $15 an hour is not enough to survive without cheat codes. A living wage, which is what minimum wage is, minimum wage was explicitly created to be a living wage. Go listen to or read the speech from Franklin Delano Roosevelt when the minimum wage was created. It was explicitly created to not only be a living wage, but a living wage for a husband, wife, and 2 kids to survive on one job. That's the way our society was supposed to work. If your job that you want to hire out, you want to hire somebody to do a job for you, if you can't afford to pay that person a living wage for literally giving up their life for you, working 40 hours a week, then you can't afford an employee. And if your business idea doesn't work without an employee, then your business idea is a failure. You have a non-viable business. I mean, if your business requires glasses, do you have a right to force the glass making company to take less than what it costs to make that glass in order to make your business viable? Do you have that right? Of course not. Don't be stupid. If you want to open up a gas station, do you have a right to force the gas companies to sell you gas at below cost so your gas company can be viable? Do you have a right to force the landlord that you're renting the land from or the people you're buying the land from? Do you have a right to force them to take a lower price in order to make your business viable? Of course not. You're probably thinking, you're a lunatic, you're nuts. Why would I ever think I have the right to do that? Then why do you think it's okay for you to have the right to take someone's labor for less than its cost in order to make your business viable? Why do you think you have that right? I want you to think about that for a minute. Labor is a cost, and that labor has a cost associated with it, my survival. Why do you have a right to take my labor at below its cost in order to make your business viable, but you don't have a right to take property, rent, or product at below cost in order to make your business viable? No, you either make it yourself or you come up with a business model that works. And if your business model can't pay someone a living wage, your business model is a failure and your business is not viable. You are literally living on welfare. Your business is surviving on welfare because you are using the state to force people to give you product, their labor, at below cost in order to make your business viable. You do not have that right. And yet we have it codified in law. If you don't understand this, you're part of the problem. You really are part of the problem. I mean, hey, I get it. It's nice to be able to have a rich man's service of having a butler deliver food to your house. It's not viable. You don't make enough money to properly pay for such a service. I don't make enough money to properly pay for such a service. A pizza shop might, because a pizza shop can amortize the cost over their products. But a delivery service can't, because they don't control the price of the product. They're trying to create this gig work business of delivering other people's products to you. And since that means they have to pay full retail for the product, that means you have to pay full retail for the product, which means you can't amortize the cost of the delivery service into the cost of the product. McDonald's can. McDonald's can reduce their cost of product to the point where they might be able to pay for a delivery service and absorb that in margin. But a separate delivery service unrelated to the businesses, butlers, literally a butler service, they can't do that. What they charge has to pay for the service. And if they actually charged an appropriate amount for the service, you'd be paying $18 to have a hamburger delivered, plus the cost of the hamburger. Just the cost of so if you got a $10 value meal, you'd be paying $28 for it. Does that sound viable to you? That's actually what it costs. We just went over the math. That's actually what it costs. So how do they do it? They do it by stealing. They do it by paying a slave wage to the 1099s that work for them and not paying them properly, which means since they're not paying that cost, the employee is, they don't have a cost to pass on to you. So you get an artificially low price service that should not be possible to exist. And now when you do that, when you force an unviable system to function, you get the problem you have now. You get people going nuts when they realize they're not making any money and there are no other jobs. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. If you have any questions, ask down below. I'll do my best to answer them. But you have to look at this from a logical perspective. Butler services for fast food delivery is not viable. It's just not. Even with robots, I don't think it's viable. I mean, when you amortize the cost of those delivery robots to bring you the food, short of a very small working area, like for example, the little robots in hotels, that can work. It's a controlled environment, limited expenditure. But to go 10 miles to deliver something, even with automated systems, I don't think that's viable. It's just... Ask any questions you have down below.